Hello, everyone. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 596 New Social Environment. I'm Raven, the Programs Associate here at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Mary Frank and Andrew Woolbright. We're thrilled to welcome poet Sarah Passino here to close today's program. Before we get started, the Brooklyn Rail acknowledges Black Lives Matter. Here in New York, we are on Lenape-Hoking, the unceded land and waters of the Wapinger, Canarsie, Munsee, and William Lenape people of the Delaware Nation and Shinnecock Indian Nation. We encourage you to check the chat for a living document of resources. The Brooklyn Rail would like to thank the Terra Foundation for sponsoring our NSE program and making these daily conversations possible, and for the support of our growing archive. You can view today's event in our full archive on the Rail's YouTube channel. And now to introduce today's guest and host, sculptor, painter, photographer, and fierce advocate for human rights, Mary Frank's work is in collections of the Metropolitan, Whitney, Brooklyn Museums, and numerous private collections. Represented by DC Moore and Elena Zang galleries in New York, she lives and works in Manhattan and Bearsville, New York. Endlessly, I ask myself, what is art for? The list changes. When people make music, they inhale, connect their eyes, and on exhalation begin the music. I would love to make that moment visible. A body of work is a wonderful expression. The feet, the space between the bones, the sigh, the scream, the wings, the eyes, the connective tissue in us and all in between all living things. Artist, curator, and critic Andrew Woolbright is based in Brooklyn, New York, and is an MFA graduate from RISD in painting. Woolbright is the founder and director of the gallery Below Grand, located in the Lower East Side in New York. In addition to curating, he is a regular contributor to the Brooklyn Rail. He currently teaches at the School of Visual Arts and SUNY New Paltz, and is a 2021 to 2022 resident at the Sharp Wellington Studio Program in Dumbo. And now over to you, Andrew.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for attending on this lovely afternoon. And I'm so excited to get to talk to Mary Frank today about her incredible show up at the Dorsey Museum in New Paltz, a place I know well. I've taught there many years. And her show, The Observing Heart, opened February 5th. It's up through July 17th, so you don't have a lot of time to catch it if you haven't already. So I'd highly encourage all of you to make the trip up this weekend or the following weekend to see it before it closes, because it is a wonderfully ambitious, scaled, dynamic exhibition. You can see here from this install shot, there's sculptures, ways that dictates your flow as you're walking through these things, and the paintings and the drawings form these really meaningful backdrops to these figures in motion and horses and all these wonderful things. So it's got it all: sculpture, drawing, painting. Have to go see it. And named The Observing Heart. Mary, may we start there? What's the exhibition name? Wonderful, poetic. How did that come about, and how are you thinking about it?
Oh, well, I am always observing, right? And hopefully. Hello? Oh. I am always observing, and hopefully from the heart, from the eyes, from the body, from the spirit. Yeah.
Well, it reminds me, it has kind of a romantic sensibility to it. This idea that the heart is not just a thing that feels, but is also concerned with the world around it. Seems maybe a little William Blake-ish, or a nod, or some type of way that the way we see and observe through art connects us to everything.
Well, I did know Blake as a child in England. My parents had Blake books, and I read them. And I did love them, and poetry has always been powerful for me. Yeah.
Wonderful. I think that comes across. Maybe we can move to the next slide. Although, I mean, incredible. There's a virtual tour, by the way, on the Dorsey's website that you can also check out. Let's start with Arching Woman. This is one of the older pieces in the exhibit from 1972, 50 years ago. I made this lovely ceramic piece. And Mary, do you want to talk us through what this represented in your practice when you made it?
I don't know, represented. It's just one of so many pieces of figures that are often, in a sense, part growing creatures, plants, trees, but also women or sometimes men. Yeah.
When you began, you were really a part of the 1950s and the 60s and 70s of the art movement. You were close with Milton Resnick, de Kooning, Jan Mueller, but you began from a very early age making drawings and wood sculptures, correct?
Yeah, the first sculpture was certainly wood, and I was very influenced, of course, by both Giacometti, D.C. Moore, and always indigenous ancient work. My mother was an artist, Elena, and I wasn't as a child so interested in her work, but I did love her art books, which I took to bed with me, and I slept on a piano, on top of the piano, because there wasn't room for a bed and the piano in the room. And I took always several books with me, and they resonate still, images from those books, and I'll refer to them in certain pieces. Yeah.
Wonderful. Why wood blocks? I mean, I know wood carving was there kind of from the beginning.
Why wood block? What did you say?
Why? I know wood carving was there in the beginning. Why did you choose to sculpt with your drawings?
I think my mother had bought, excuse me, my mother had bought chisels to make frames for her paintings, and so those chisels were there. And I worked at a sculptor's studio who didn't really teach me, and he left the place mostly when I was there, but there was wood there that I could carve, small pieces. And then when I broke a chisel, then he said, "Gott verdomme," which means "God damn it" in Dutch, because he was Dutch. And but I had the experience of being able to carve. Yeah.
That's so wonderful. I mean, this piece has such wonderful movement, using the hair to make it stand up and finding ways to create that negative space under the figure. It's really exceptional. It's a piece. Can we move on to the next slide, Raven? And here's another example of these wonderfully carved forms, sculptures. Henry
Not
Moore
carved,
said was
clay.
and Henry Moore, you said, was an early influence as well, correct?
Yeah, but these are clay, and they're actually based on the experience of having seen Sufi dances, which I'd never seen, and they turn like constellations, and they turn on and on and on, and then you'd think they'd be so dizzy, but all of a sudden they just bring their hands and stop. But this was in a way based on that experience of having seen them.
It's amazing how you get that turning within the torso and the body and the legs and the way they're done in such a formal way. I mean, dancing was very important to you. You said in the past that you were taught briefly by Hans Hofmann and Max Beckmann, but your primary real education came from Martha Graham.
Yeah, well, because I studied with her and I really wanted to be a dancer, but then I got married when I was 17 and had a baby when I was 18, and she never had any dancers who had children, but I would not have become a great dancer anyhow. But she was formative, absolutely formative, fierce, and really involved in everything beyond dance. But of course, the gesture of the body, powerful.
And you can feel that relationship, or knowing or thinking of how your body looks when it moves, coming through in this ceramic piece. Raven, can we go on to the next? Yeah.
I made quite a number of large pieces, sort of life size, or some of them are bigger. And it wasn't my intention to do that. I made many heads, but then at some point felt I just needed to continue. And of course, because I couldn't have a kill that would be that size, then the different parts of the body or water or whatever the body was in were in sections. And I like the spaces in between. Yeah. And I could, of course, then make many legs if I wasn't happy with the leg or arm or breast that I had made. Yeah.
When I like that the shells or the way the legs are kind of have this shell shape also implies like the ability to move or this, um, this like kind of nude descending a staircase kind of way that it articulates motion or an animation to it. It's really well done.
Next.
And I was really impressed by this piece as well. There's something about that I feel like you're getting at with the work where the conjugation or your ability to like kind of simplify forms together. Like I love that the connectedness of the human to the horse. It's like very like animistic or very it's like the union of human and animal in a way by movement. It's like the movement brings everything together.
Well, they are united, and we wouldn't be here without the horse. People often ask me why so many horses, and the first thing I often say is, well, they, aside from any symbolism, a horse is a horse. And when I said we wouldn't be here without them, without the ability of people to be able to tame first very tiny horses, but then the size we know horses to be, we wouldn't have civilization as we know it if people had not been able to travel vast distances, see other worlds, other civilizations, other languages.
I think you're really able to get at that with this piece, this human animal kinship through a formal kinship or through the kinship of like shapes and design and movement. It's really lovely.
This piece, I do have a few things to say about. Chimera, as far as I know, there's only one, in the past. Mine is based, of course, on that one, and that's an Etruscan piece that what's his name in Italy got a hold of and sort of reworked. And the chimera, as I understand, is a lion with an antelope or an ibex coming out of the side of the ribs.
Yeah.
And then the tail, which is hard to see here, but the tail becomes a serpent, which then attacks the antlers of the ibex. But it's all one creature. And there's only this big one big bronze in Florence, I believe. And then there's a tiny one in a museum somewhere, and there aren't any others. But to me, the image was so powerful because it's as if the world, the lion, is also what is able to destroy itself, which seems not unlike what's going on now. But this piece is made of hundreds and hundreds of old monoprints that I made, which I didn't like, and I tore them up. And so the paper mache is the monoprints that then became the piece. But I did have a very hard time at the end. I couldn't do it for a while, make the serpent attack the ibex, because it just seemed horrible. Okay.
And I mean, drawing is such a wonderful through line in your practice, both observational and then works like this that seem to involve drawing and a relationship to drawing maybe that is like a speed of dreams or speed of distant memory or like epigenetic ideas of things that are ancient.
What does epigenetic mean?
It's like a shared memory, if you believe in it, that's like carried down through ancestry.
Okay. Okay. Well, drawing for me is a way of being in the world. And when I taught drawing, which I did for years and still do sometimes, that's what I wanted to convey to the students, which was it's an act which you can do pretty much anywhere, in jail, in the world, out on the street, in the forest, walking, in the car. I've made drawings in planes of clouds and landscape. And you don't need a battery, which is a gift. And you just need a piece of paper or something, and a stick that you could either dip in ink or charcoal, which is just burnt wood.
Mhm.
It's beautiful, beautiful medium.
A batteryless seeing machine. Yeah, great.
And this is a mushroom, a fungi that grows on many trees, probably mainly maple. And I have driven around with an axe in my car so that I could take them off trees. I mean, they do kill the trees. Um, and this one, where you see the white, and then with the owl, I had another image just scratched in. Scratching in creates this beautiful brown. So I'm not painting on it. The white is paint, but the scratching in is when it's fresh, the mushroom that oxidizes and gives you that beautiful, beautiful brown. And then there's a little stick figure in front. Okay.
I like this relationship to shadow. I mean, something that came across for me in the show is it's maybe trying to get at a relationship to making that is past our concept of capital A art. You know, it's like a return to the cave, or getting to, playing with shadows on the wall and conveying memories and conveying ideas that way instead of thinking of art past the Renaissance.
Okay. Next. These are some of the many stones I've been painting in the last whatever years. And they're all bluestone, which is under our feet in the Catskills. That's what we are walking on. And the nice thin pieces. And I paint on them, all different things. And then you'll see in other pictures where I put the stones into paintings.
Gorgeous. This is a large painting that has a really prominent space in the show, next to one of the earlier ceramic pieces we got to see. And for me, it feels kind of like a older Pompeii wall drawing or a fresco. Could you talk us through this piece?
Well, I can't remember how it started, but actually, the whole thing is not flat on the wall. The two side parts come out at a slight angle. They don't fold as in other triptychs that I made later, but I somehow didn't want it all flat. And I don't remember if I started with the small images that you see, but I kept on putting them in and taking them out and leaving the voids, which were the absences. And What Color Lament may be a title of Neruda, a poet I've always loved a lot. But yeah, the Whitney owns this. I don't know if they ever showed it. Lots of work, of course, is in storage everywhere. But I was very glad to have it for this show. Yeah.
I love the pigmentation of this one. It's like a pre-impressionist color palette. It's like all earth tones, and that's something that comes across, I think, in all of your work is paint that is mixed from ochres and siennas and dirt, like something that's existed for forever. And when you
This
use,
this
oh,
is a triptych, but maybe you see the two lines where her arms are. And so this is 8 feet by 4, but when it's the two sides close, then it becomes 4 feet by 4 feet. So it's a triptych, and I've always shown many of the triptychs so that people could touch them and open them and close them, because to me that was the point, to have these different worlds. And I'll just show you a small one here, so you, even though it's sort of a half triptych, because I will see if this works. Can you see here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But when it's closed,
It's a continuity. Yeah.
but I can't hold an 8-foot one up for you.
Yeah. Not today.
But I liked very much that people could touch them instead of don't touch. And it was interesting to see people some of them were half closed, some were quarter closed, some were completely open. Yeah.
Well, it seems like that picks up on, there's such a relationship to animation in all of your work. And then that's like a directly physical, literal animation.
Yeah.
But even the ones that don't move, they imply like the scene before and the scene after in this wonderful, rich way. That I really like.
And then this, of course, is very related to the recent painting behind me, with again the young woman, based in some ways a witness of my daughter, Andrea. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, next.
I like the way she holds on to the trees.
And, or was it like this? All the gray pieces, I'm pointing at them, but
Yeah.
those are stones, and they're attached to the painting. And I was drawing the Neanderthals in the museum, what do you call it? Natural history. And a family came by with a maybe 5-year-old boy. And he pointed to the figures that I was drawing, and he said, "Mommy, Daddy," which was really nice.
Yeah. Well,
Not bad.
I mean, there are other artists. I know Jan Mueller may share this same thing, but the artists you want to talk about for the most part are not the typical artists of the, Western American avant-garde. You're more interested in Indian and Inuit and Colombian art and art from unknown artists in general.
Well, I am, but I'm also very interested in many young artists now. I may not know all the names, and I don't get out enough to see all the work, so some I'm seeing, of course, online. But I think there's extraordinary work being done now, and also work in demonstrations, which I would be really proud to have made, often by people who've never picked up a pen or a pencil or a brush to do anything, but they're so, I can feel their desperation to make a comment on the world as it is now, the racial killings, the climate, whatever it is. And they make extraordinary things. Yeah.
Able to translate that energy. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I like to, going back to color, how you're able, I mean, so much of the color is, muted, brown, grays, sepias, black and white. But when you use color, it's often this like vivid, bright, intense orange, or it's like a cool blue. It's like a real relationship to fire and coolness in the night. It's always aware of the temperature of these things.
I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah.
This got used as actually as a poster for the Woodstock Film Festival, which was, I liked it that it got used. Yeah.
And how are you thinking of the development of paintings and drawings like these? Are they coming from dreams? Are they coming from active imagination and daydreaming? Are they coming from just a lot of observational drawings that merge, like that chimera sculpture?
All the above, all the above. Plus, I think being in the garden influences me enormously, and music. And I'm married to a musician, musicologist, Leo Treitler. There's a lot of music in the house, some with his son, who's a cellist, Max, and people, singers, Lily Arvis, just lots of music. And I can't imagine living without it. And I listen to a lot of different music often when I'm working. Could be opera, could be doo-wop, could be blues, could be Sicilian, whatever. Yeah.
You're capturing the warmth and the coolness of those sounds.
This one, oh, the next one, yeah. This one interested me a lot because it was an old painting that I was never happy with, which is not so infrequent. And I left all the border, the top, and there was the woman, and she was holding a boat, these refuge boats that I make a lot. But it was never right. And then I don't remember when I did it, but it was probably at least 10 years old. And then I put stones in her face and repainted her and repainted the hands and made a different boat. And somehow it worked. As everybody knows, reworking old paintings is sort of a dangerous game. It's like cutting your hair more. Finally, you've cut it all off. And you're sorry you did.
I like that analogy.
But I like this because it's so three-dimensional that when you move to the side, then the expression changes, really.
Let's move to the next one, Raven. We can kind of flip through as we go. These next ones have, the figures are these stark figures versus a landscape, like figure, ground, foreground, background, and they don't have necessarily a sense of gravity to them. They might be flying, they might be falling.
Well, what it is that I wanted to paint this. I did have this idea. I don't always start with an idea. I often start just with the material itself. But in this case, I did want a figure leaping from one surface to another. And so I was painting rocks, and then I thought all of a sudden, why am I painting rocks? I have rocks. And so there are two rocks here put into the painting, and then there's a lot of paint and everything. But to me, that was both sort of a little bit shocking and humorous, but also I really liked it. Yeah. And that was, it's called Leap for Terry Tempest, who is an extraordinary writer who I've done a number of collaborations with. Actually, we did a book called The Burning Testament, a little paper book sold for $10, which was a nice price. And now we have a new one coming out at the end of July. And she is a great writer, a great friend, and been fighting to keep wild land all over the world, and particularly in this country, all her life. And she did a fantastic series teaching at the Harvard Divinity School on climate, and I did a poster for her, and she had all different people, scientists, artists, musicians, actors, all speaking about climate, which we have to speak about all the time.
Yeah. You've always been a collaborator. You were, involved in theater design and sets and sitting in the rows, drawing and working on those things. And you said you've been interested in the work of artists like Mimi Gross and artists that are, and Peter Schumann as well, artists that are
Bread and Puppet, yeah.
The bread
And Henrietta Mantooth, yes, influenced by so many people.
Mhm.
This is a painting on a rock, yeah. This was done right after George Floyd was murdered, and I couldn't work, didn't seem to make any possibility to work, or work seemed not the point. And then when I did, this was what I did. But the world, it didn't just begin with him, of course, and it certainly hasn't ended at all. But the racial killings are a disaster, and guns are a disaster because they are what kill people.
Yeah, I think it's a time where not a lot of artists were making, but were protesting in the streets.
They were protesting. What? I'm sorry, what did you say?
I just said I think it was a time where a lot of artists were not making, but were protesting and out.
Yes, yes, yeah,
Making.
yeah. Essential. Okay.
I love this one, how it communicates. I mean, again, this involves a type of dream concept of a bird, or it falls apart as a bird, becomes a bird again in the right way, assembles in the eye at a wonderful speed. That I think has a relationship to like using your hand to swipe, or like creating or carving space with this direct material manipulation. It's really wonderful. And I like how you're using erasure in this one. Like, you talked about William Kentridge and Anselm Kiefer, and all of your work, there's never an attempt to hide your tracks or mark or cover up your marks or the way you make. There's a real honesty and clarity to what you're leaving behind in the trace.
Yeah, well, an eraser is a tool. It's a good tool.
I like this one. It combines an observational drawing. Well, it's all different observational drawings, correct?
Yeah.
Which might not be totally visible in the show, but because of the way you paint and draw sometimes, but there's always this underlying, undergirding thing that you're always observing and doing observational drawing around everything you're making.
Yeah, it's hard now to go to zoos. I've always drawn in zoos and Natural History Museum. Now it's very, very painful, of course, because everything you're looking at, they're telling you how many are left of the whatever species it is. And when I did a book with called Shadows of Africa with Peter Matheson, and he talked about, we did the book quite a long time ago, and it was from his writings of over 50 years of being in Africa, not steadily, but living there, but also being there over and over again and seeing the decimation.
I love the attention that you're able to bring to animals. I feel like there's so many artists that really prioritize humans and human figures and know how to relate to them, but this jackalope drawing is an exquisite portrait of understanding understanding animals. It's non-hierarchical in a beautiful way, how you're thinking about the world.
We can't live without them, whether it's insects, fish, birds, mammals, whatever it is. There is no way we can. What was the last one? Oh, that's my husband, Leo, from 1990, gazing out.
And what about
Okay.
the marks and the rest of the portrait and the drawing?
It says leaves there sometimes. I think leaves were falling down while I was drawing him. Yeah, maybe the autumn.
I think, I mean, I love this smearing and this finger painting. You know, I remember in art education, finger painting was always tried to be instructed out of everyone.
No, it's good. Fingers everywhere. Yeah.
And it's like the oldest thing, you know, like
Yes, it is.
120,000 years ago,
Yeah.
the hand on the wall. Yeah, I love it. Beautiful.
Leopards, leopards. Yeah. These are monoprints now, which I did for many, many years. I'm not doing them right now, but I might want to again. There's a wonderful form, wonderful way to work because you have your past, your present, and your future because you could, they're each single, but they're not etched. So you're basically painting on a surface and transferring. And when I was teaching monoprint at Queen's College, they didn't want me teaching monoprint. They said, well, what's monoprint? It's not really a print, it's not really a drawing. And I said, well, it's sort of like when a woman or somebody puts on makeup, right? If they put lipstick on and they want to blot it, that's a monoprint right there.
Huh.
And and so they wanted to cancel the class, but the students loved it so much they complained quite bitterly and actively. So we had the class, and then we had it for quite a number of years.
Wow. I mean, yeah, it's trying to keep something permanent. It's very impermanent, moving fast, and then being held accountable to it. You get what you get.
Yep.
That's it. Yeah.
So I used many pieces of, paper that I put into the print. Yep.
Yeah, the textures of these are incredible. And the inventiveness on the fly. I mean, that.
Well, it is a possibility of being very spontaneous. Yeah.
Will have to be. Yeah,
And you can do them by hand. Here's the chimera again. This one is called Lion Becoming a Chimera. Because you can't, there's no antelope here. What happened to him? Don't know. Gone. These are now photographs. And so this is all stones that are painted. I think you can see that. And then I just take a picture of it. But I'd never photographed before. I never wanted to. I loved photography, but I had no interest to do it.
it's lovely. Yeah. Work that will fall apart and not being concerned with it. It's about the act of making it more than the preservation of it.
Well, this is preserving it, actually.
Yeah.
And the white you see behind the bird is what I call shadow paper. They're papers where I don't tear or cut anything out. I tear in, cut in, and what you see is light coming through those lines or spaces, but nothing is actually taken out. So it's being created by what the light is at that moment.
I mean, I love these theatrical effects, or it really is trying to sit around the fire and hear how these things felt.
That's good. So the next one is, this is burnt wood. And then there's the paper put around it.
More
And these are stones with moss. And this is a paper, what I call shadow paper.
Yeah.
Now, this is, I was very glad in the museum that I wanted to put posters. And so you can see what these posters are: Don't Tear Families Apart, The Mexican Border, Climate Truth, made at the time with We Make America, Joyce Kozloff. In her studio, she had lots of women come make posters for the first Women's March and for many, many marches after.
Mhm.
And Schools Not Wars, the time of the Iraq War, and it had another side with the woman with the dead child. And the top one, of course, is Ukraine, No End. And I've often walked alone. They've been used in demonstrations, of course, with lots of people, but it is very interesting to go alone with a poster in the city or town by yourself. And people respond very differently. First, they think, of course, you want to sell them something. And when they get over that, they are often baffled. But it's good that they're baffled. And then sometimes they speak to me, sometimes they don't know what the hell's going on, sometimes they begin to see what's going on. So it's something I've done over years.
What turning yourself into a disruption, which people aren't used to, or
What?
it's turning yourself into a disruption, which people
Yeah,
aren't used to.
yeah.
Yeah, the back room of, I mean, the whole museum show is wonderful, but the back room is an incredible feat of all these things being hung together, and the drawings and the posters, and just like there's a magnificent energy to all of it, of trying to get all the ideas out quickly and with feeling, and trying to retain your feeling into these things. They all have a charge to them.
And David Horning, the curator of the show and wonderful friend and wonderful artist, he really did that. Jammed, hundreds of drawings, monoprints,
Yeah.
photographs, and posters. Yeah.
Wonderfully hung together. I mean, it's because it's it's overwhelming in the right way, it's not too much, but it is it
Lucky
is
thing.
it is
Lucky thing.
yeah, you catch
So
the
you saw the truth poster. Then someone said, why don't you make a button? I never made buttons. And so we made buttons. My great friend and assistant, Vanessa Hoheb, got a button manufacturer, and we made some, and I was giving them out free. And then someone said, why don't you sell them cheap and give the money to something you believe in? So I decided this is right after he got elected, right? And I thought we needed some truth because we weren't getting any, and we're still not. And I decided to give all the proceeds to Planned Parenthood. And as of now, we're up to $25,000, which I am astounded and happy about. And here's Delgado over here, and here's Terry Tempest, and here's a woman in the subway with the button, and another woman at the market, I think. And there's AOC with the button. And here's a box. If you know places that want a box, we will give them a box. And people were online. Vanessa had a table out at a recent demonstration in Kingston, and she gathered up $300 in a short time. So they need all the money, and it's a good thing. Next. So this is me cooking Solar Cookers International. I work for them as a volunteer since about 22 years, whatever. And initially they just had the simple cooker, which they still have, and you can make it yourself. They give you the directions of how to make it. It would take you about 35 minutes to make something you can cook: chicken, rice, meat, fish, bread, cake, eggs, and purify water against all bacterial diseases. There are millions now all over the world, and there are hundreds of designs, all different ones. And we just did a demonstration in front of the museum with Dr. Alan Bigelow, who's the physicist for Solar Cookers International, and he speaks at the UN for solar cookers, but also teaches all over the world. And it's delicious, and it's saving what's left of the forest, also saves millions of women from being raped who go further and further, can't walk home. They go 20 miles, they sleep out. Men know they sleep out, and they're raped, often with their daughters, and not once, more. No pollution, the sun is free. Try asking people what's free in the world, and you'll be quite surprised that they mostly don't say the sun. Not because they're stupid, it's just so taken for granted. So,
I'll channel the energies of the rail to say Lauren Monk, quote, artists must create on the same scale that society has the capacity to destroy. And
yes,
in this practice of buttons and solar cooking, it's using art towards the practice of restoring what's being taken away by everything else.
yeah,
It's a zero-sum game.
yeah. Everybody can do something, everybody. Okay. So I made these initially for solar cookers. They're pins and also necklaces, and there are also many other images, but they have them at the Metropolitan now Museum. And this was a collaborative piece I did. This painting was used by Osvaldo Golozhov, an Argentine Jewish composer who now lives in the States. He lived in Israel for a long time. And he did a concert at Carnegie and used a lot of my work, which was animated in a very beautiful way. And it's based on a book by David Grossman, an Israeli writer whose son was killed in Palestinian-Israeli conflicts, but he writes about also the Palestinian father whose son was killed in the same way. And the music is extraordinary, and Silk Road Ensemble is playing, plus other well-known singers from 3 different countries and musicians from China and Iraq. And it will be performed in, I think, 17 cities around the US next season. And I do love to do collaborations.
Yeah.
Feels good.
Throughout. And that's something that music lends itself well to. Artists who have a background in music are attracted to music.
Yeah.
Finding harmonies.
So this is from the little book that I did, the last book I did with Terry. And then the new one will come out in the end of this month, I think. Yeah. Put out by Peter Caiaphas, Aikens Press Foundation. And that's the cover of the book I did with Peter Matheson, great naturalist and wonderful person. And the little book I did with Terry Tempest Williams, Desert Quartet.
Yeah, they work wonderfully.
And this is a birdhouse. The Botanic Garden in Brooklyn asked a bunch of different artists to make birdhouses. And I wasn't interested so much in making art as a nice house for birds that are being extincted fast, many of them. And so I hope they use it. So I haven't been able to go there since it's up because I'm upstate now. But probably the whole show is really interesting. And it's just birch bark and moss and a little paint and one stone piece of a bird.
Room for one bird to have a wonderful house. Yeah.
So if you like, I would I would read some things I wrote.
Would love that.
Yeah. Usually I write them onto leaves. I wrote a little bit onto a clamshell. But that when I start on a surface, a board, a canvas, or stone, whatever it is, for me, it's a kind of geographical space where time is suspended and there are urgent climates. And it's a place to charge paint into music, to rage, to evolve color, fierce spaces, tender tears and tears and joys. Then, when a piece is finished and it goes out, away from me, in a way a little bit almost abandoned by me, in a good way, it's an offering. I think of it as an offering. And then that piece is taken into others' histories, others' eyes, remembered by other lives, languages. And that's a form of becoming. And that phenomena, I'm sure not only for me, for I would think all artists, is a very interesting and mysterious transformation, translation from the work in the studio to wherever it goes out, whether it's in the street or a gallery or wherever, that then other people are bringing their lives to it. And that really interests me. And I feel I've been very blessed in a way, that I've had all kinds of responses, some very mysterious ones that I don't understand, but kind of appreciations which feel, just profoundly personal. So, yeah.
Thank you guys so much
That's the end.
for this lovely conversation. We do have a couple of questions.
Oh,
So
I do have one important thing I didn't get in, if I can just, that Sunday, July 17th is the last day, and Sheila Silver, a wonderful composer, is going to be performing her music with a violinist and a pianist from 3 to 5, and the info is on the Dorsky website. And also that my work is at DC Moore Gallery in New York City and Elena Zang in Woodstock, where I've shown both places for over 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions. Our first question would be from our own Chloe. So you can go ahead now.
Hi, Mary. Thank you so much for all of those amazing thoughts into your work and those paintings. It was such a pleasure. My question is, going back to the title of the exhibition, The Observing Heart, I think you've spoken really eloquently about the value of observation and the value of that time and that suspension. And I wonder how you safeguard that time in an increasingly distraction-ridden world as the phone rings behind me.
And me. How do I have no idea. I can't tell you. It's an ongoing struggle, right? Yeah. Just I have to accept that I'm almost always going to be interrupted by different aspects of life. And some I might enjoy, and many I don't want at all, but that is how it is. And the world is very demanding now, very. And I feel we have to fight very, very hard to save what we can. Yeah. And give to each other. Yeah. More?
Thank you.
More difficult questions?
We have one more question from Fang Bui. One second.
Hi, Mary.
Where
Thank
are
you
you?
so much. I have
Good.
several questions, actually.
Ah,
Hi.
hi.
I'm so happy that you came to our, social lunchtime, and I'm planning to drive up to see your show next Tuesday
Good.
with a friend, with Michael Branson, actually.
Uh-huh. Nice. Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so he and I is going to make a trip together. So I have several questions because it seems that we know many friends in common.
Yes.
First of all, Ma and Lillian Shapiro.
Yes.
I first learned about you through them.
Uh-huh.
And but beyond that, throughout the years, Mary, I became friends with Wolfgang, with certainly Alan Capro, many people who have gone to High School of Music and Art just a few years before you did.
Yeah.
But your history is legendary. In other words, you began also study dance with, first of all, with Martha Graham. That's a huge beginning for you. To me, that's how the whole movement began, the way I read it in the work. But I also wanted to, ask a few questions regarding to early work, because after having, studied with Martha Graham, you went to the High School of Music of Art, and then later, you also took some drawing class with Max Baxman when we were new. He was here in New York after having taught in St. Louis for a decade or more. He actually taught here at the Brooklyn Museum of Art. So I wonder, all of that experiences, not to mention with Hans Hofmann, you also have gone to classes with him. So it's an amazing experience in terms of accumulating everything possible. My first question is very simple.
You think so? Okay, what is it?
Mary, but once I had a long discussion with George Sugarman, and somehow your name came up. We start talking about your work being one of the first sculpture that really have occupied the floor, as the way that Giacometti, 1938 or 39, famous sculpture, Woman with Her Throat Cut, which I know make an impression on the young Richard Serra that compelled him to give up painting after he graduated from Yale in that very summer, 1967, I believe.
And what is the question?
The question is that your work already occupied the floor very early on. And that's what George Sugarman was telling me about as his work began to do the same. So that question is very simple. It go back to your experience of dance or having been a dancer. Is that a fair question to ask, whether movement began with your experience as a dancer?
I was never a dancer. I always danced. I never danced professionally. I never became a dancer. But of course, it was a huge experience. I mean, I've told this story often. Martha Graham stood and faced the class and said, what was the first wall? And all the students staring at each other and thinking, what the hell is she talking about? And okay, the Great Wall of China or some wall in Greece. And she just stood there and waited. And then finally she stood and folded her arms like this over her chest.
Mm.
That's the first wall. So that was very impressive to me. Yeah.
Yeah. What about, living theater, Mary?
Yeah. Open theater I worked with. Yeah.
So
Joseph Chaikin.
exactly.
Big influence. I have books and books of drawings of rehearsals, workshops, and drawing in the dark where I couldn't see what I was drawing.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah.
And then my second question is in regarding to plaster and ceramic, and that maybe began with my having a little bit of study in the tail end of Peter Agostini. You remember?
Yeah, I do. I was in the same gallery with him. Blanked on the name. On Madison Avenue, 70th Street. We were in the same gallery together.
Right.
With the gallery, he was put in jail for showing a work that had an American flag that was sort of mangled a bit.
Right. And Peter, I remember talking a great deal about Giacomo Manzu.
Yeah.
All the Italian artists you meant to say was Marino Marini, but I meant to ask about Giacomo Manzu. And
Yeah, I was interested in his work. Yeah.
what roughly the time, Mary? In what year was?
When? Oh,
Yeah.
I never know time. Hopeless. Can't give you any times. The past. The past.
Okay. Well, what about Margaret Pons Israel?
I think she was an influence. She worked in clay, wonderful work. I think lots of people don't know her work now. She also painted and made clay bathtubs, and I felt she could have made the Brooklyn Bridge in clay. Yeah, and it's a pity if her work is not known now. Yeah.
Well, it should be. If
Yeah.
well, anyway, I thank you so much for coming on today, and
Thank
congratulations
you.
on a big show. And I urge that every one of us make an effort because the show will be on view for another 2 weeks. So
Till the 17th, yeah.
the 17th, so we have time to go see it. So
And then you can hear music then. Yeah.
that's terrific. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Back to you, Raven.
Thank you, Fern, for your question. Um,
Who's asking?
at the Rail, we have a tradition of ending our community of Sarah Passino to the stage and has work published or forthcoming in the Brooklyn Rail, Diagram, Berkeley Poetry Review, and many other publications. Her writing has been supported by fellowships from the Milton Avery Graduate School of the Arts, Verona Jaffe Foundation, Poets House, the Center for Book Arts, and by 92nd Street's Wise Rachel Westian Poetry Prize. Before getting her MFA from Bard, she earned a PhD from Vanderbilt University and an MA from Teachers College, Columbia University. She has most recently been experimenting with washes, intimate publishing, and the old notebook as unfamiliar source material. Sorry. Sarah, this.
Thank you so much. And thanks to the Rail, these events have been so important to me the last couple of years. And thanks, Mary and Andrew. It was amazing to hear your conversation. I'm going to read an excerpt out of a longer piece of notebook work that I've been doing, and then end on a poem by Cedar Saigo if there's enough time. Okay. These are all titled What is Today, but I'm not going to read them. Each page is its own day. What is today?
Vanessa?
What is today? Out of an understanding of language, you establish this shared other ground. A ceasefire announced, the subject taken to be the shape of each of the letters: curl, crease, beg, war snake, crease. the hum quieting this pierce of slogan trying to erase the political. Inside a suggested vibration, you remember being fictionally clothed in nation, shiver, the wars of the. Attached to the formal expressions of nothing much like the folding chair. As a way out of opaque structural sound, the cheap flashes in the pans, you enter the story in the middle, sitting inside your home, trying to avoid the specter deeper in the forest, moss, experience shading off into less overt conscious phenomenon. You walk into a compositional field, its corresponding chords historical. Unrationing ear, eaves, drop, choral evening, there is an attention arriving, crow, call, right before the rain, going after the possible incredible. This new feeling, what can be that you don't yet believe can be, stopped in your tracks by it. Watching windows sharpen perceptions of consciousness and angles, tilting your camera, I can only see the tops of your heads. Because of abstraction, you stay. Then gradually an atmospheric hyper-realism sets in. What interests me is the sorority, the velocity of speech, the new name when the bottles break over the stern. There was the primitive material of the universe, an orientation to the capillary, some argon, a sleeve. There was no rivalry. Vapor all bent toward the decision in the work. Each was trajectory, the aeolian harp, the true condition, fragile, dependent. You name this bracket, time, trace, peel the potato, dig out the eyes, still struck dumb by the prisms of light on the wall, in the water, in the pot. Refractive index of the glass. Can it be just Sunday, for example? April orbits April for only so long, a historicizing lunar gravity. You don't know your sign. Outside two rainbows, you arc, you angle of incidence. You are the tiniest refractory lens, effect of everything else and violet. You stand in the doorway by the count, the numbers of beds in the poorhouse on the one hand and the sanatorium the other, lyric pressure, stellar, light year, a fabric felt between the fingers as a way to say hello. A sequence of rotating prisms, the morning, rhyme, warp, warning, the way you are practicing understanding, wet, appetite, tone, whoa, this is magnitude. Writing into a premise, this language only yours if you share it, doing in the shaping of the doing. Contractual negotiations playing out in the wrong rooms, a worm crawls through its own body in the black dirt, loop, underline, strike out. In both directions, scrim, surface, winged, overhead the goose pointing his whole long body forward in the sky, whether therefore the matter would be open, whether left to its openings and to its shapes tonight. What is today a kite string in the hand, a low pressure pocket of air, you are heat map, looking up collective nouns for grackle, a remnant, a rim, a measuring, what is brought home by the war, piecing together the picture, breaking the bottle over the stern. Still you are drawing clouds, still you are looking for slack, space, sense in the sky, shapes made procedurally. You read edges for expression, for conditions, feeling the taut line loosen, caught between the raw feeling of getting it and then of not getting it at all. You lose the thread, blanketing, try to loose tension, expressions of understanding, syntax of expressions. What will happen is inside what is happening now. Pointing up with index finger, standing under blue, logic crying into your hands. It opens today in genre, an establishing shot, saying durational blue, then old rosy-fingered, temporal. She calls, he is laughing, he is out of the woods. It opens in holding out for, onto the comedy. If every atom somewhere between what is and what could be, they were holding onto the roof for their lives, fauna too, humming through the stem, stamen, nodding where speech is the most careful, the breath, if documenting or channeling, the feel of the hot tea in your hands, the critique of the medium matched only by your commitment to its possibilities and light, asking after the principles, after the fact, after the convention, saying at the end, this will all be okay. The blue rabbit in the night radish patch, her fat bottom, the leap of the blue tail under this green moon. What is today? A composition by field, a sequence of rotating prisms, a pot rattling on the stove, the sweet smell through your house. It is hard to say how long you've left the lens open, how still the horizon line would be, how knowing the light, but in layers of time, how partial the equations, the angle, the incidence, how mutual the shape on the page. You tested the suffix, a facthood, a Middle English state of being, something shared. You see also friendship, finitude, generosity. She says this is happening in different time zones in your body. I am the one wearing the moss. I am the one wearing this moment, sociologically letting my sensibilities mat lay out on the forest floor, what you are and why not reducible, strophic, strobe, a direction of light from one side of the day to the other. The first dream was blue and then green, then the great question of class, taste, cold, rush, lake. From who knows where you are back here again. What is today? You know sheer expression, lift a new ground up with your eyes. You were in a valley. Headlong, so you wanted more open space on the page, holding him and holding him. Your memory of it all fluorescent, green, depending on where you are in the gravity field, composition field, is that what you call the country? Holding the page up to the window and writing out of the city park, the shadow of the bird. When you go back to find its shape, there are inversions, the madness of the given. She asked when it became so glued together now that it's unglued. You don't see it until someone shows you, and then you see it everywhere. You fill your hands with radishes from your 2 plastic bags. Black dirt from the roots on the street falls between you. One of you is older now. One of you has been in the mountains. One of you has been in the valley. A stone, a kiss, a wave of happenings, this new orientation of time. In order to translate the surface, you both hold up the instability of the picture to the window. The kind of star you learn to see out of the corner of your eye, the new way you are spilling out into the streets, the way to say time together. You make intimate the shades of this durational sky, summer, remembering winter, flipping to a landscape view, flying white to see the page, 4 to 8 washes of the same palette, stacking them in a pile. And this is the piece by Cedar Saigo, Ode on Distortion. Welcome everything in, using both cursive and print in the same paragraph, or voluminous examples of cross-writing during Civil War when paper turned scarce. When the words do not resolve but clink and die next to each other. Arbitrary actions leveled at flagstones in architecture, resetting our margins after the poem has already been typed into emotional paragraphs. A hovering form of distortion, that we die and only the recordings will go on existing. Who filled my head with such dark and exceedingly separate stars? Ghosts I lifted along the turns of wandered roads, ahead of the game, behind the times. We regret our early books for their lack of innate distortion. A dead yellow breeze onto the gold coin, floor show. When he faints from terror, she busies herself. A crinkling irritation, violin, electric black. A writer is a foreign country coated in ritual dust. I mistrust my neighbor's children, all government. They have come out as a terrible person. I welcome you into the sound of repeating our demands as distillate, archive, plumes of coal smoke, simply the time it takes for the bank to form above us. I make endless destroyed works as they will become the best poetry, exquisite, half forgotten, a torn tissue, 4 to 8 specks of unequal green. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was beautiful. And thank you, Mary and Andrew. We'd also like to thank Vanessa and everyone at the museum for helping put together today's event. Over the past 22 years, the Brooklyn Rail has brought together art, music, dance, film, theater, literature, and thoughtful social and political mediations in our monthly publication and in our public events, like here in our daily NSE. Please check the chat for a link to donate to support our writers, editors, and operations here at the Rail. Join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for our 93rd Radical Poetry Reading, curated by David Mills, featuring Rose Oslander, Molly Peacock, and Rosebud Benny Oni. You can now turn on your microphone and say goodbye as we leave.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Mary, Sarah, and Andrew.
Chloe and Raven for making this all happen.
Thank
Elena,
you,
Thank you
Sarah,
so much.
and
for the
Fawn.
beautiful reading.